A very good morning to all of you. Welcome to class 11th Business Studies. We are doing chapter number 2, that is forms of business organizations, and in which we have already covered the sole proprietorship form of business organization. Then we have covered partnership, Hindu undivided family business, cooperative societies, and joint stock companies. And the last topic, that is joint stock companies, one last topic is left for this chapter, that is types of companies. As you know that we have already covered that what are the different features of a joint stock company, and also we have studied the merits and demerits of a joint stock company. Now we have to start with that what are the different types of companies. When we talk about types of companies, we simply talk about that how many companies, how many types of companies you can start if you want. So let us see one by one. First of all, the companies can be of two types: private company and public company. So the companies are of two types. You can note it down side by side, or you can take the screenshot. Private company and as well as public company. But sir, what is being defined as a private company and which company would be defined as a public company? Better for that, you need to see that there are different steps of the formation of both the companies. For example, if I'm going for the private company, then of course there are different steps to form. And if I'm going for the public company, then also there are different steps to form the company. Like, let us now study about first, that is the private company. You know, a private company means a company which restricts the right of members to transfer its shares, which means this is that company where if you purchase the shares of a private company, you cannot transfer the shares to anybody, which means you cannot sell the shares to anybody. Suppose if I am the member of the private company and I have purchased the shares of that private company, then it is the restriction to a private company that I cannot sell those shares to any other member of outsider, which means it is a restriction on the private company that it cannot transfer its shares. Then second point is, it has a minimum 2 and maximum 200 members. There is a limit also on the maximum members of the company. That minimum there will be the 2 members only, which means if you want to start a private company, you can have just 2 members and you can start the private company. And maximally there would be the 200 members, which means the maximum members of the private company can be the 200 members. So there is a restriction imposed on the members also of the private company. Minimum 2 members to start a company, and maximum there will be 200 members to have in the private company, right? The private company does not invite public to subscribe for its securities. But जो private company होती है, वो public को invite नहीं करती to subscribe for its securities. Which means जैसे एक public company होती है, it gives its information to public so that it attracts the public. That's a Reliance Industries Limited है, that is a public company. So we people can invest in that company. Any one of us can be the member of that Reliance Industries Limited, because that is a public company and it issues the shares, and we can of course purchase the shares. But this thing doesn't happen in the case of private company. Private company के केस में ये नहीं होता. Private company के केस में ultimately क्या होता है, that it does not invite the public. वो public को invite बिल्कुल भी नहीं करती. यानी कि it issues shares only to its members. जो उसके अपने members होते हैं ना, वो उन्हीं मेंबर्स को शेयर इशू करती है. अलग से जो आउटसाइडर्स होते हैं, जो पब्लिक होती है, इट डज नॉट डील विद दैट पब्लिक एंड इन फैक्ट डज नॉट इशू द शेयर्स टू द पब्लिक. इट इज नेसेसरी फॉर प्राइवेट कंपनी to use the word private limited after its name. Suppose Ram Private Limited, Mohan Private Limited, means whatever name of the company there is, they have to mention the word private limited along with the name of the company, so that it can be easily identified by people that this company is a private company. So how will we define that what is a private company? We'll simply say that private company is that company in which first of all there is the restriction on the members. Minimum 2 members are required and maximum 200 members are required only, right? So limitation is there for the members. Then it restricts the right that a private company cannot transfer its shares to the public, which means whenever there is a point to transfer the shares, The private company cannot transfer the shares. Private company transfer नहीं कर सकती shares को. Means that if suppose you are the holder of private company shares, you are the member of a private company and you have purchased the shares of private company, in that case you are not eligible to provide the shares, to sell the shares to the any other member, any other outsider, because the private company is not allowing you to do. Then private company does not invite the public, which means it doesn't issue the shares to the public, so it neither invites the public also. And fourth point, every private company has to apply the name private limited after the company's name, which means every private company, it is required for every private company to use the word private limited after the name of the company. Now, privileges of a private company against public company. It's very important question for 3 marks. Privileges मतलब होता है फायदे. प्राइवेट कंपनी को क्या फायदे दिए गए हैं पब्लिक कंपनी के अगेंस्ट. लेट्स सी कि प्राइवेट कंपनी के पास क्या क्या फायदे मिले हुए हैं एज कंपेयर टू द पब्लिक कंपनी. द वेरी फर्स्ट प्रिविलेज, सी, to start a private company you require only 2 members, whereas 7 people are needed to form a public company. तो पहला प्रिविलेज प्राइवेट कंपनी को ये मिला है कि अगर आपने प्राइवेट कंपनी स्टार्ट करनी है तो ओनली विद द 2 मेंबर्स यू कैन स्टार्ट द प्राइवेट कंपनी, जबकि आपको पब्लिक कंपनी स्टार्ट करने के लिए यू हैव टू अल्टीमेटली अरेंज द 7 मेंबर्स. So this is the first privilege that you have received as a private company, that to start the private company you need to get only 2 members, whereas if you are into the public company then you need to get the 7 members, right? Second, देखिए, there is no need to issue a prospectus as public is not invited to subscribe to the shares of a private company. प्राइवेट कंपनी को कोई भी प्रोस्पेक्टस लिखने की जरूरत नहीं होती है. यू मस्ट नो द मीनिंग ऑफ प्रोस्पेक्टस फर्स्ट. प्रोस्पेक्टस एक ऐसा लीगल डॉक्यूमेंट होता है बेटे जिसके अंदर कंपनी की सारी इंफॉर्मेशन हम लोग लिखते हैं. वी राइट द कंप्लीट इंफॉर्मेशन रिगार्डिंग द कंपनी इन द प्रोस्पेक्टस ओनली. Why? Because prospectus is ultimately that point of that document which is containing each and every information of the company in it. Like if we go to the college for the admission, or if we go to any school for the admission, we would like to see their prospectus first. हम लोग कोशिश करते हैं कि हम पहले उनका prospectus देखें. क्यों? क्योंकि उस prospectus के अंदर कॉलेज अपना सारा इंफॉर्मेशन लिख कर देता है. कब वो एस्टैब्लिश हुआ था, उसकी फैकल्टी कितनी है, वो क्या क्या कोर्सेज जो है ऑफर कर रहा है, फीस क्या रहेगी कॉलेज की, बुक सेट कैसे मिलेगा. ईच एंड एवरी इंफॉर्मेशन इज रिलेटेड टू कॉलेज इज रिटन इन द प्रोस्पेक्टस. सेम वे, whenever I want to purchase the shares of a company, I must see the shares, I must see the prospectus of the company first. कंपनी का प्रोस्पेक्टस कैसा है, मतलब क्या कंपनी का जो प्रोस्पेक्टस है उसके अंदर क्या क्या मेंशन है कंपनी के बारे में, तो मुझे डेफिनेटली पहले उसके बारे में भी जानना पड़ेगा. तो देयर इज नो नीड टू इशू अ प्रोस्पेक्टस. प्राइवेट कंपनी को प्रोस्पेक्टस लिखने की जरूरत ही नहीं है. क्यों नहीं है जरूरत प्राइवेट कंपनी को प्रोस्पेक्टस लिखने की? जब प्राइवेट कंपनी ने आउटसाइडर्स के साथ कोई मीटिंग ही नहीं करनी है, जब प्राइवेट कंपनी ने आउटसाइडर्स के साथ कोई बात ही नहीं करनी है, जब प्राइवेट कंपनी ने आउटसाइडर्स को शेयर्स इश्यू नहीं करने हैं, पब्लिक के साथ डीलिंग ही नहीं करना है, तो वो प्रोस्पेक्टस प्रिंट करवा के क्या करेगी इसे, जब आपने पब्लिक के साथ डील ही नहीं करना. प्रोस्पेक्टस आप कब प्रिंट कराते हो? व्हेन यू वांट टू डील विद द पब्लिक, जो पब्लिक कंपनी करती है, विच इज व्हेन इट इश्यूज द शेयर्स. तो पब्लिक कंपनी को प्रोस्पेक्टस प्रिंट करवाना होता है, लेकिन प्राइवेट कंपनी को देयर इज नो नीड टू प्रिंट द प्रोस्पेक्टस. और देखिए, allotment of shares can be done without receiving the minimum subscription. A private limited company can start business as soon as it receives the certificate of incorporation. देखिए, 4 steps होते हैं, 4 stages होती हैं to form a public company. एक पब्लिक कंपनी को बनाने के लिए 4 स्टेजेस होती हैं, जबकि एक प्राइवेट कंपनी को फॉर्म करने के लिए देयर आर ओनली 2 स्टेजेस. जबकि प्राइवेट कंपनी को स्टार्ट करने के लिए देयर आर ओनली 2 स्टेजेस. तो आपने ये चीज ध्यान रखनी है बेटा. जब एक प्राइवेट कंपनी को स्टार्ट करने के लिए 2 स्टेजेस की जरूरत पड़ रही है और पब्लिक कंपनी को स्टार्ट करने के लिए 4 स्टेजेस की जरूरत पड़ रही है, तो प्रिविलेज किसके पास है? प्राइवेट के पास है या पब्लिक के पास है? ऑब्वियसली प्राइवेट कंपनी के पास है. द प्राइवेट कंपनी हैज गॉट द प्रिविलेज ऑफ स्टार्टिंग द बिजनेस विद जस्ट ओनली 2 स्टेजेस. Whereas if you are into the public company, then you have to go for the 4 stages of the making the public company. So in that case, जब आप फॉर्म करते हो कंपनी, जब आप पब्लिक कंपनी, हम लोग डिटेल में पढ़ेंगे आगे के चैप्टर्स में, जब हम कंपनी फॉर्म करते हैं पब्लिक कंपनी, तो मिनिमम सब्सक्रिप्शन का आना बहुत जरूरी होता है। मिनिमम सब्सक्रिप्शन मतलब मैंने अगर सपोज फॉर एग्जांपल इफ मैंने शेयर्स निकाले हैं 1 लाख शेयर्स फॉर इशूइंग इट टू द जनरल पब्लिक, देन डेफिनेटली मिनिमम सब्सक्रिप्शन मतलब 90% लोगों को शेयर्स के लिए अप्लाई मुझे करना पड़ेगा। अगर 90,000 शेयर्स के लिए लोगों ने मुझे अप्लाई कर दिया, देन आई विल स्टार्ट द अलॉटमेंट ऑफ शेयर्स टू देम, देन आई विल सेल देम द शेयर्स। एक इजी एग्जांपल लेते हैं, डीडीए के बारे में आई थिंक सब जानते होंगे, दिल्ली डेवलपमेंट अथॉरिटी, डीडीए। डीडीए बेसिकली क्या होता है? डीडीए एक ऐसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, दिल्ली डेवलपमेंट अथॉरिटी, डीडीए एक ऐसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है जो कहीं ना कहीं, डीडीए जो है वो फ्लैट्स बनाता है लोगों के लिए, जमीन पे बिल्डिंग्स बनाता है, उसके अंदर फ्लैट्स बनाता है, लोगों को इश्यू करता है। फ्लैट्स बनाने से भी पहले डीडीए मार्केट में क्या निकालता है? सब्सक्रिप्शन निकालता है कि भाई हम लोग जो है सपोज 1000 फ्लैट्स इस पर्टिकुलर जगह पे बनाने वाले हैं, क्या आप लोग इंटरेस्टेड हैं? प्रोस्पेक्टस निकालता है। अगर तो 90% मतलब 900 फ्लैट्स के लिए एप्लीकेशन आ गई, फिर डीडीए उसके ऊपर काम करना शुरू करता है। लेकिन अगर 900 फ्लैट्स के लिए यानी कि मिनिमम सब्सक्रिप्शन 90% के लिए अगर एप्लीकेशन नहीं आई, तो डीडीए डज नॉट वर्क फॉर दैट, डीडीए उसके लिए काम नहीं करता। जिसका सिंपल सा मतलब यहाँ पर ये निकल के आता है कि क्योंकि वो एक प्राइवेट कंपनी है, उसने पब्लिक के साथ डील नहीं करना है, तो प्राइवेट कंपनी को मिनिमम सब्सक्रिप्शन की कोई जरूरत नहीं है। जब उसने पब्लिक से डील ही नहीं करना, तो ना तो प्रोस्पेक्टस छापने हमने ऊपर पढ़ा था अभी, और ना ही लोगों को शेयर्स ऑफर करने हैं। सो देयर इज नो नीड फॉर एनी रिसीविंग द मिनिमम सब्सक्रिप्शन। लेकिन इफ यू आर द पब्लिक कंपनी, देन यू नीड टू गेट द मिनिमम सब्सक्रिप्शन। अगर आप पब्लिक कंपनी है तो आपको मिनिमम सब्सक्रिप्शन उस टाइम पर लेनी पड़ेगी। क्लियर? आगे चलते हैं, मूविंग फर्दर। A private company needs to have only 2 directors against the minimum of 3 directors in case of public company. Fourth privilege private company को मिला, that a private company needs to have only 2 directors. Private company को सिर्फ अगर 2 directors हैं private company के पास तो भी चल जाएगा। But if you are the public company, लेकिन अगर आप public company है, then you must have minimum 3 directors. डायरेक्टर्स मैंने आपको कल बताया था, बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स। अगर तो आप प्राइवेट कंपनी है तो आपको सिर्फ 2 डायरेक्टर्स की जरूरत है, एंड यू कैन रन योर कंपनी, योर बिजनेस। बट इफ यू आर दी पब्लिक कंपनी, अगर आप पब्लिक कंपनी है तो कम से कम आपको 3 डायरेक्टर्स होने की जरूरत पड़ेगी, कि आपके पास कम से कम आप 3 डायरेक्टर्स होने चाहिए किसी कंपनी के अंदर। फिफ्थ पॉइंट देखिए, a private company is not required to keep an index of members while the same is necessary in case of public company. Index मतलब होता है रिकॉर्ड। प्राइवेट कंपनी को अपने मेंबर्स का रिकॉर्ड रखने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है, क्योंकि कम लिमिटेड मेंबर्स हैं, पता होता है कंपनी को। लेकिन एक पब्लिक कंपनी को अपने सभी मेंबर्स का रिकॉर्ड रखने की जरूरत होती है कि कंपनी के पास कितने शेयर्स थे, कंपनी ने किस बंदे को कितने शेयर्स इश्यू किए हैं। सो कंपनी हैज टू कीप द रिकॉर्ड ऑफ इंडेक्स of the things, index of the members to form it. But whereas in the private company there is no requirement to keep the index of the members. लेकिन प्राइवेट कंपनी में इंडेक्स रखने की कोई भी जरूरत नहीं होती। ठीक, आगे चलते हैं फर्दर। नाउ लेट अस टॉक अबाउट द सेकंड, दैट इज द पब्लिक कंपनी। कि पब्लिक कंपनी क्या होती है? अब जो हमने प्राइवेट में पढ़ा है उसके जस्ट ऑपोजिट पॉइंट्स वी आर गोइंग टू स्टडी इन दी पब्लिक कंपनी। कि पब्लिक कंपनी वो होती है जिसके पास मिनिमम 7 मेंबर्स होने चाहिए स्टार्ट करने के लिए, एंड मैक्सिमम देयर इज नो लिमिट। अभी आपने पढ़ा था प्राइवेट कंपनी, तो मुझे बताओ प्राइवेट कंपनी में कितने मेंबर्स की जरूरत थी? प्राइवेट कंपनी में वी रिक्वायर्ड मिनिमम 2 मेंबर्स, मैक्सिमम 200 थे। बट टू फॉर्म अ पब्लिक कंपनी मिनिमम 7, मैक्सिमम देयर इज नो लिमिट। पब्लिक कंपनी हैज नो रिस्ट्रिक्शन ऑन ट्रांसफर ऑफ सिक्योरिटीज। यानी कि पब्लिक कंपनी, सपोज अगर मैं एक पब्लिक कंपनी हूं, या मैंने पब्लिक कंपनी के शेयर्स खरीदे हैं, तो आई कैन सेल आउट द शेयर्स। सपोज टाटा एक पब्लिक कंपनी है, एनीबडी कैन इन्वेस्ट इन टाटा कंपनी। सो मैंने टाटा के कुछ शेयर्स खरीदे हैं। अब जब मैंने टाटा के कुछ शेयर्स खरीदे तो मैंने क्या किया, मैंने उन शेयर्स को मैं किसी को भी वो शेयर्स बेच सकता हूँ। आई कैन सेल दोज शेयर्स टू एनीवन। मैं किसी को भी वो शेयर्स जो है बेच सकता हूँ, सेल कर सकता हूँ। दैट इज माय पॉइंट, which means there is no restriction to transfer the security. Whenever you want, you can transfer the securities to anyone. Securities here means shares. So you can transfer the shares to anyone. C point देखें. It is not prohibited from inviting the public to subscribe for its securities. I just told you that in the private company, there is a prohibition. The private company is not going to deal with the public. But when we talk about the public company, there is no prohibition at all. Anybody can, be contacted to issue the shares or to basically, invest in the shares of the public company. So there is no restriction, there is no prohibition from the inviting the public to subscribe for its securities. Then public company should use the word public limited after its name. ये ध्यान रखना है कि public company को public limited लगवाना अपने नाम के बाद जरूरी है. जैसे मैंने आपको बताया private company के लिए क्या word लगना था, please let me know. If you are going to go for the private company, क्या नाम आपने लगाना था private company के अंदर? Which name after that you have to put in the very good everyone private limited लगाना था. But when we are talking about the public company तो आपको कौन सा नाम लगाना पड़ेगा? Public limited. यहाँ सिर्फ limited word is basically there. Suppose Tata Limited, Reliance Limited, public companies में. Now moving on. Difference between the private company and the public company. Let us see that what is the difference between the private company and the public company. See, on the basis of members. Of course, in the public company, we require minimum 7 members and maximum unlimited. But in the private company, we require minimum 2 members and maximum 200 members only. Board of directors. Minimum board of directors 2 in case of private company and 3 in case of public company. Index of members, matlab keeping the record of the members. No requirement in the case of private company, I told you, and required index to be made. Compulsory mandatory index to be made in case of public company. Then transfer of shares. No restriction on the transfer of shares in the case of public company. Public company के केस में transfer of shares करने की कोई restriction नहीं होती है, लेकिन private company के केस में आप there is a restriction कि आपको shares transfer करने पड़ेंगे. मतलब प्राइवेट कंपनी के केस में एक रिस्ट्रिक्शन होती है कि आपको ट्रांसफर शेयर्स करने पड़ेंगे. मतलब आप मतलब एक रिस्ट्रिक्शन है कि आप नहीं कर सकते ट्रांसफर. Anybody cannot transfer. But public company के केस में there is no restriction. Anybody can sell the shares to anyone. Then invitation to public to subscribe to shares. You people tell me that where it is allowed to print the prospectus and issue it to the public. Please let me know. Where is it allowed to print the prospectus and issue it to the company, issue it to the public? Very good, everyone. Public company. But there is no requirement of issue of prospectus in case of private company. Why? Because private company is not dealing with the public. When it is not dealing with the company public, then why it will be printing the prospectus and giving them people, right? Now, Ria, you just let me know that what is the meaning of prospectus here. Please tell.
So prospectus means they give the whole information about their company.
What kind of information is written in the company?
Like what they are going to do in the company and what are the information regarding their business or the company, what they are going to do, the next further steps.
Perfect. Now I would request Sneha Jain to please unmute and let me know the meaning of prospectus in this case and why it is required in the public company.
Public company में हम लोग directly public से.
Yes, Sneha, over to you.
Yes, sir, I'm speaking.
Sneha, your voice is not coming,
Sir,
but your mic is also unmuted. Still, I think there is some problem in your mic. All right. So a prospectus, I think everybody now knows. Prayag, you tell me what is the prospectus?
Sir, it is a kind of record which all companies kept all information is recorded.
All information such as when the company was established, what company is going to do in future, the money which company would be taking from people, where that company is going to invest that money, how the money would be invested, and whether company would be any contract, any agreement, any information related to company would be just mentioned in the prospectus. So prospectus is required in case of the public company, because public company is allowed to deal with the general public, but prospectus is not required, or invitation to public is not done in case of private company, because there is no requirement to be done for the private company in this case. Now, just have a look that what all we did in the companies. When we started the fifth and last form of business organization, that was of course a joint stock company. That how much you have to do, please see to it. That was a joint stock company, where we have just read the meaning of joint stock company. Then features of joint stock company. Features means what are the characteristics or features, like artificial person. It has a separate legal entity. Its formation is of course not easy. It's time consuming, it's expensive, as well as it's a complicated process. Then perpetual succession. Perpetual succession means members may come, members may go, but it is not going to affect the continuity of the business or of the company. Why? Because company has been created by law, then only law has been given the power to wind up this company. Then control. Who has a control? The control or the management lies with the hands of board of directors. And how the board of directors are elected? The board of directors are basically elected by the members of the company. So board of directors have a complete control on management over the company. They would be taking all the decisions, but mind it, the company has to make its own common seal. That means it has to sign its own contract in its own way. Of course, it is not an artificial, it is not a natural person, but it is an artificial person. And this is the reason that why we call a company is an artificial person, because of course, like a natural person, it cannot breathe or it cannot run or eat, but at least it can make a contract with the outsiders, because it has a common seal where it can sign the contract, enter into the agreements, which is of course a good point for the company. Then risk bearing. Who bears the risk? Obviously the members of the company bears the risk, but mind it, the risk would be borne by the members in the pre-decided ratio. Pre-decided matlab up to their liability or up to their investment value. Then we studied the merits of joint stock company, like limited liability, that the members of the company are having the limited liability, which means they are having the limited liability. That means that they would be just in the position to get to know about the they would be liable to only up to the amount for which they people have invested. For example, if I have purchased the share of 100 rupees, then of course I'm liable to pay rupees 100 only to the company maximum, right? Then transfer of interest. Transfer of interest means the transfer of ownership we are basically talking about. Transfer of interest means we are talking about transfer of ownership, that it is very much required to transfer the ownership or transfer of interest. Why? Because in the company we can sell the shares. Of course, if I have purchased the shares of any one company, then it is very much easy for me to sell these shares to anyone else. Now you people, can you please tell me this transfer of interest lies in which type of company, whether it belongs to the public or private? Now you are having the knowledge about this, that transfer of interest lies with. Very good, Sneha, Mridul, Sia, Satakshi, Riya, Rishi, Ayush, Navya, Vaibhav, Ujjwal. Very good everyone. Ishika, Hardik, that is a public company only. So public company is basically there which can transfer the shares. Sanya also very good. Perpetual existence, I told you that members may come, members may go, but it is not going to affect the continuity of the company. Reason? Because it has a perpetual existence. It has been created by law, and when the company has been created by law, then only it's law who is going to wind up the company. Nobody else can wind up the company by its own. Scope for expansion. The company has a greater scope for expansion. The company has a greater scope of expansion. Reason? Because somewhere company has a large financial resources also, so it has a greater scope of expansion for doing. Professional management. The company has various professionals also as a board of directors who knows how to take all the better decisions. So it's a panel of all specialists and professionals. Also, sometimes company is going to pay high salaries to the people and hiring people who are specialists and experts in taking up the key decision, because company can afford to pay them the salary, so company can hire those people. As a result, there is a professional management that keeps on in the lives of the company. Then there are some of the limitations also. complexity in formation, because in the formation of company we require to have certain steps, and those steps are very much problematic. Reason, because a lot of things to be covered, a lot of documentation is to be made, and of course it is very complex to form the company. Then lack of secrecy, there is a lack of secrecy also. Reason, there are many members, there are who can leak out the information of the company. As in the case of the previous forms of business organization, there were only few members who were taking up the key of the business. But now there are many members. Being the many members of the company, it is possible for the companies to actually lost the secrecy, because any of the member can pass out the information or leak the information to any of the outsider. And of course the accounts of the company also are basically visible to all, because they are allowed, it's compulsory for them to print their accounts in the newspaper and publish them to the public, so that public should know if they are going to invest the amount in the company, then what would be their use of that. Then impersonal work environment, it is being observed that in the companies there are impersonal work environment, because company and the members are found different in case of joint stock company. So they are not attached to the company or to their business, because it's like company is different and their members are different. Numerous regulations, a lot of regulations they have to follow. They have to work as per the Companies Act 2013. Also they have to work as per the different aspects, like they have to follow the SEBI guidelines. We will be doing it later. Then they have to register with the registrar of companies, and they have to follow the company's law. A lot of numerous regulations are there which the people have to follow. Then delay in decision making. Delay in decision making means that the decision making might get delayed also. Their decision making might get delayed also, because whenever in the company we are going to the meeting, AGM, sometimes it happens that people are not they are not in a position to take up the combined or joint decision. Why? Because they feel they have a conflict in taking the decisions and their thought process is not same. Sometimes it might get delayed also. Oligarchic management, नाम का ही बोलते हैं वोटिंग राइट बेटे. हम कहते हैं ना सबके पास वोटिंग राइट होता है कंपनी में, सारे मेंबर्स के पास एवरी शेयर होल्डर हैज अ इक्वल वोटिंग राइट. सपोज सबको एक वोटिंग राइट मिलता है कंपनी में, लेकिन वो नाम का ही होता है. क्यों? जनरली जब एजीएम होती है तो ओनली फ्यू पीपल गो टू द एजीएम, फ्यू पीपल आर देयर हु एक्चुअली गोस टू द एजीएम. तो जब फ्यू पीपल ही एक्चुअली एजीएम में एनुअल जनरल मीटिंग में जाते हैं, तो एक नाम का ही उनका अल्टीमेटली ये पॉइंट होता है दैट they will be going to the AGM and they will be participating in the voting, because ultimately decision is being taken by the board of directors only because of less people going to the AGM. So it's called oligarchic management. Conflicts in interest, which I just told you. Now types of companies we did: private company and public company. Private company, which has some of the restrictions over minimum 2 people and maximum 200 members only. And it does not provide the transfer of shares allowance to anybody. The transfer of shares cannot be done for the private company, and it does not print the prospectus also. Why? Because it is not dealing with the public, and its name must end up with the private limited word. But some of the privileges are there, which we'll already study in the form of difference. Now public company, that company which has minimum of 7 members and maximum there is no limit. It has no restriction. Anybody can sell or transfer the securities to anyone, and it is not prohibited from inviting the public to subscribe to its securities, which means that ये prohibited नहीं होता. कोई भी invite कर सकता है public को. मतलब ये they people actually print the prospectus, invites the public. Reason? Because they are allowed to sell the securities to the general public, and its name must end up with the word limited only. Difference we have already covered on the basis of members, on the basis of minimum number of directors. Index of members means whether you want to keep a record or not. Then transfer of shares. Transfer of shares means we basically talk about the transfer of securities only. And invitation to public to subscribe to shares, whether the prospectus can be issued or not, right? So that is all we have covered in the different forms of joint stock companies. Now with this we end up with the chapter forms of business organization. where we have already covered the different forms of business organization, जिसमें हमने already different forms of business organizations पढ़ लिए हैं. That the forms of business organizations, like we have already covered the sole proprietorship, first form of business organization. Then we have studied the joint Hindu family business, HUF, which is the second form of business organization. Third, we have already covered the partnership, where two or more people are just participating in the decisions making by making the partnership business. Fourth, we have covered is cooperative societies. Cooperative societies means where people are the members of the same society and they're working. And fifth, we have covered is joint stock company. Joint stock company means anybody with the membership of various people, they can start up the company, whether that can be the private company or that can be the public company, right?